For the last 4.5 years, I have been a climate mitigation scientist and modeler. So what do? I create an actionable map for climate mitigation for the future. We call these scenario pathways. Me and my colleagues use modeling tools to create them and advise diverse range of stakeholders, governments, companies, the public, and banks. We use these pathways also as a guide to help people make the right choice on energy technologies. And we need to invest in them today. As I work in climate, I notice not only the planet is heating up, but also the trade tensions and economic fight around the world in EU, US, and China. These signatures policies impact our daily lives and impact the global geopolitical order. And they have broad political support because they have a simple message: green growth is now. However, green growth does not equal to net zero emission. And why is that? Why is our emission still high? This is because our homes, our factories, our industry, our cars still run on outdated technologies based on fossil fuels. So this is why, under current policy scenario, we're still heading towards 2 degrees near the middle of the century and 3 degrees near the end. And this is what worries me and motivates me to work harder. So let's go to some simple facts. Most greenhouse gas emission is caused by the production and use of energy. According to IPCC, almost 80% of the annual emission comes from the production and consumption of energy. Our energy supply, that is the power sector, industry, transport, and buildings, all contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. So how to transform this? How to abate the emission from energy sector? There are actually just 2 simple ways. I'm a physicist. I like reducing complexity to simplicity. What's the first way? Take green electricity and just use it. This is called direct electrification. It's as simple as it sounds. You plug in your phone to the wall and charge it. And the second option is called indirect electrification. So we convert the green electricity to gas molecule and then to liquid molecule. Now we can use these molecules. However, this process is extremely energy inefficient. We lose some energy every time we transport, we store, and we convert the energy form. So we need to use it for something we absolutely need it for. For example, primary steel, long-range vehicles, high-temperature heat, or chemicals. So let's go back to the first option. Here's Shia LaBeouf reminding everyone working in transport and heating sector in Europe, please just electrify it already. It's simple. And it's supported by the fact that green technology in power sector and transport are increasingly cost competitive. If we go back to our earlier chart, the part of emission that is economic to abate is roughly about 1/3. It's not great, but it's also not nothing. This is basically power sector and transport. Let's look at the cost of electricity today. Around the world, in China, India, and Germany, we see solar and wind beat fossil fuels, coal and gas on cost, on levelized cost per kilowatt hour. Solar is around 3 cents per kilowatt hour. This is the future. It's cheap, it's green, and it's scalable. In Europe, in Germany, the contrast is even starker because we have an energy crisis of traditional fuels. If you raise your hand to say, that's just instantaneous generation, we all know they are intermittent, how about storage? It's pretty much the same story as chemical storage. Lithium battery has seen a decrease in cost almost by half over the last 7 years. And if you're worried about lithium scarcity, well, sodium battery is also quickly catching up on cost. And if you're worried about mineral use in general, there's also heat storage using traditional mediums such as bricks or stones. So what does cheap generation and cheap storage give us? A cheap hybrid system. In the US, across the states, where there's hybrid system of PV panels plus chemical storage, the costs have come down even though the batteries are bigger and bigger in size. So that's the power sector. And now let's look at transport electrification. We all heard about the devastating performance in internal combustion engine, but it's still astonishing to look at the numbers. Look at that nosedive just around the pandemic, and it has never recovered. Electric vehicle, on the other hand, has experienced exponential bullish growth in the last few years. And it won't stop there. Next will be trucks. Medium and heavy trucks in the past few years are no longer just sold in China. They're sold around the world, increasingly in Europe. So the revolution in greening power supply and transportation is finally happening. However, there's something still missing. Let's look at an example. Pakistan in April lifted the import tariff they imposed on Chinese solar panel import. What happened? There is a massive influx of imported solar panels. It literally crashed the price of panels inside Pakistan. However, just a few months later, we see that their national grid is coming under strain from all of these instantaneous intermittent generation of solar powers. So our grid is not equipped to distribute energy of the future. So how do we balance supply and demand? It really comes down to two cases: whether there is a grid or there is no well-developed grid. If there is a grid, actually it's a little bit complicated because that grid likely was developed and built to transmit electricity from coal and gas power plants to your homes. They're not equipped for self-generation for this presumption model. So in this case, what we need is a grid update, a grid upgrade, a grid modernization, and also upgrade around operation and dispatch of power. We need to make sure economic optimization is used to dispatch the cheap renewables first. And we need institutional change to make that happen. Either market liberalization using spot market or to use algorithm. Either way, we need to do it optimally. And in the second case, when there's no well-developed grid, well, that's called a greenfield model, and we have decentralized generation and local storage probably outcompete the large supergrids that we see in models a couple of years ago, when all of these things are still quite expensive. So I call that the microgrid world. It's decentralized, and it's local storage, it's smaller grids. Think of it like the traditional media versus the new social media. In the traditional media, broadcasting stations, TV or radio, they broadcast programs to your living room. And in the new social media, everyone can generate content. You're sort of connected with your neighbor, but you're also mostly fine by yourself. And just remember, if you do not like intermittent generation, you can always put a concentrated solar plant on your roof. So the second option, it's a little bit more involved compared to the first. We need to first convert electricity to gas molecule, then to liquid molecule. We can use it for primary steel, for high temperature heat in industries, for example, cement clinker production, long-range transport like ships and planes, and also chemicals, plastic or fertilizers. Let's look at this option in more detail. Compared to the first option at the bottom, we see at every stage of the conversion, there's energy loss. And in this paper, for 3 applications they look at, direct electrification is several times more efficient than indirect electrification. And also, let's bear in mind, hydrogen is actually a potent greenhouse gas. Some studies show that if it's leaking more than 10%, we might as well not do it. It does not bring any climate benefits. So it's very important to do this cautiously. And on top of that, hydrogen plant is customized to its surrounding. It's not so modularized as simply producing electrolyzers. It needs a water treatment plant, it needs a cooling system attached to it. This is not as scalable as some models simply show. And this is the current bottleneck. It's the intermittency of the power supply and the custom design. So this is why green hydrogen cost is still high, without the CO2 price, that is. However, it might not stay that way. Study after study shows that cost parity could be reached between green hydrogen and gray hydrogen around 2030. And it's not just hydrogen, but also green liquid. For green ammonia, by 2050, it could beat in cost the fossil-based ammonia. Imagine building a fertilizer in your backyard and do not have to import natural gas. Deloitte also shows a broader range of chemicals, not just on ammonia, but also e-kerosene. So this is the future, when green liquid fuel could reach cost parity with traditional fossil fuel liquid fuels. And this is how we transform the energy future. We make all areas of the emission actually cost efficient to abate. So this is the hope. By making the right choices on technology today, we ensure that the option is cost efficient in the future. So let's make the right choices today. Remember our two options, because the future is now, and everyone needs to contribute. Government, banks, companies, and individuals. It's no longer in the future, it's pretty much happening now. So let's make sure we make the right choices, because the energy future is now. Thank you.